Hello, everyone, and welcome to the best and worst of Walt Disney World, brought to you by Dreams Unlimited Travel, experts at helping you plan the perfect Disney vacation. Be sure to visit them on the web at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com. I am your host, Rhino Clavin, and in this week's episode, we're going to be talking about, we're going to be saying what makes a Disney park the worst. I know, this could be, whatever, controversial, but I don't care. We're talking about it. We did a best, we're doing a worst, and to help me have this conversation, we have Denny Sunderly.
Hey there.
Jackie Gailey.
Hey, y'all.
And Craig Williams.
Oh, hoy, hoy.
Well, here we go. I feel like if we're going to talk about the things that make it the best, we need to talk about some of the stuff that they don't do so well. So we're going to dive right in here. And I think the first thing I think about what makes a Disney park the worst for me, it can be the weather. My body was not meant for the Florida heat. And, and that can be very trying for people who are just visiting from, Canada, the North, anywhere that isn't the sun. And especially in the summertime, that heat can be overwhelming. You think, oh, I'm prepared for it. But, whatever you do to prepare for it, it can still really wear you down really quickly. And if you get on a streak where you're having a thunderstorm every day in the middle of the day, which is very common during the summer, but sometimes you get those weeks where it's just like starts at 11 and doesn't stop till like 7, it can ruin your vacation, and it can be unfortunate, and there's nothing you can really do because it's not like you can plan too much around that other than saying, well, I'm not going to come in the summertime in the rainy season. But, if you're coming pretty much this big chunk of the year, there's a chance you could run into that sort of an issue. But anybody else, what do we think about the weather here, guys? It's terrible, right? What do you think, Denny?
Yeah, no, I hear you, especially when you're visiting, say, in June or July or August, and you have those afternoon storms and you have the humidity out, like crazy. But you still have this plan that you need to get to this attraction, and you want to hit this attraction and eat at that restaurant, and so you're going. Well, you step foot into the queue line for an indoor attraction, and the AC is blasting. So all of a sudden, you've got sweaty, whatever, humidity, clothes, and you're stepping into AC, and you may be standing there waiting for a while in that AC, in that queue. And so, I would bring a sweater just to throw on while I'm standing in this crazy cold queue. But of course, that sweater is out the window as soon as you step off that attraction and step back out in the Florida heat. So you kind of have to be a jack of all trades when you travel. Come prepared for anything.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. It might seem stupid to throw a sweatshirt in your bag when it's 110 degrees outside, but you're right. I mean, you could get sick. Some people get sick that way, but
and it feels like 1,000 degrees. I'll never forget how it feels when you walk out those doors at the Orlando airport because that humidity just gets you right in the face.
I always say it's like somebody is trying to smother me with a wet electric blanket.
Yes.
That's what it always feels like. But
that's a really good description of that.
Craig had a good one before we started. He was talking about the layout and travel time, how it kind of eats away at some of your vacation. Craig, do you want to speak on that a little bit?
I think it's pretty self-explanatory, so
that's it.
Okay,
that's
now it's that's part of the blessing of Walt Disney World is its size. They've had this room to make this entire big surrounding area with 21 hotels and 4 parks and 2 water parks and everything else that goes in there. Disney Springs, beyond and beyond. So the blessing of land is an amazing thing. And the fact that Disney bought it up the way they did, it was allowed to create that bubble that we talked about in the last episode, where they're able to keep those issues that happen with Disneyland away from Walt Disney World, where you have tiny motels and restaurants and dive places all coming up right next to what they want to be an immersive experience that is memorable. But it's also a downside too, that it takes a long time getting around property unless you pay the extra money to have a rental car. And even then, sometimes it's still a pain because like there's no easy way to get to Magic Kingdom unless you're on the monorail loop or if you're at Wilderness Lodge or Fort Wilderness. If you have to drive in, then you have to deal with the monorail or the ferry boat. If you take a bus in, you have to deal with Disney buses. If you have the money and you can afford minivan, then none of this matters. But I don't think that's something that's not in my budget, and I feel like I'm not terribly off, but I just don't know if it's affordable for most people on their vacations, even if they're splurging. But this stretches for everywhere. Like there's nothing worse than being all the way out at Fort Wilderness and having to get all the way to Animal Kingdom. That's a haul. And so it's just, you start cutting away at your vacation and the time you're spending on vacation by being on all this public transportation or driving around yourself and parking. It's not, it's the one difference that between what could be like really amazing by being in one small space and then taking it and spreading it all out. Like I can only imagine how cool it was being there like in the early 70s through 80s when all you had was, Polynesian, Fort Wilderness, and Contemporary in the Magic Kingdom right there. And you probably did feel like, whoa, it's all right here. That's amazing. So
I always think the hardest part of a Disney day too is the beginning of the day, because there's nothing more. It's like it can't start off correctly ever because of that travel time, like whether you're waiting for the bus or whatever, so there's that factored into it, getting the whole family up and going and then having to get on the bus and hope that it's not super crowded to get on the bus. And then once you're there, you got to make your way through security. And so it's like, once I'm in, I'm not getting out again. I ain't doing that. I'm not coming back up. I hate that feeling when you've already been in one park and you're driving up to the second one and you're just like, breathe. Like,
yeah,
it takes a long time.
Yeah,
it does. And they tell you when you make a reservation at one of the restaurants, allow an hour and a half for travel time. Like,
yeah, I was just going to say that. Yeah, you really have to.
You can't just leave and pop over. You have to
even
really
hour and a half.
plan it.
Jeez Louise.
An hour and a half.
Up to, like even though when you look at a map and you look at it as the crow flies, and it's not, it doesn't seem like it's going to be, a 90-minute deal,
right? Yeah.
And then it really is. And you're like, whoa.
It wouldn't be Walt Disney World unless it was complicated, right? So we didn't talk about that, but I'm just going to say it now. I'm adding it to the list. I actually feel like a vacation at Walt Disney World has become, yes, the pandemic is going on and it has made a Disney vacation very difficult to maneuver around certain stuff with like a new park pass system and hotel reservations and whatnot. And again, that's why we say this is the time to use a travel agent and a Dreams agent, because it doesn't cost you anything and it saves a lot of that headache for you. But it's not really a spur of the moment place as much as it could be. Like you're not really getting as much out of it if you're somebody who can't absorb all of that information, have every single person that you're going with all organized and together. And even when you are, it still could fall apart because of whatever. I have a friend who comes here like 5 or 6 times a year and she's had some, and she's the one who's like, link the passes, do this thing. And there's been times where it's still kind of craps out still. And it's unfortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you need a spreadsheet to organize your vacation, that's when you know it's complicated.
Yeah. Exactly. And that is the kind of stress that personally I don't like to deal with. So I am very fortunate to be an annual pass holder here to be able to go in and get whatever little minutia of an experience I want and then leave. So that's great. But the next one I want to talk about though is price. This is the joke always that well, it's Disney prices, and I feel like you do get what you pay for. It's in some cases, that Disney is expensive, but where else do you have experiences like Disney? You know what I mean? That it's you're paying for this Disney experience. However, there is a lot of stuff at Disney that is priced exorbitantly just because it's Disney, and it will be terrible. You know, a lot of that can fall on the food. I think some merchandise is grossly overpriced, you know, and the price of a ticket is, I hate to be that guy who's like, when I was a kid, but the thing is, I was a kid not that long ago and a ticket was like $45. And so, and since I have lived in Florida, the price of a ticket has gone up like $30 or something. So it's kind of insane. But what are you going to do? You know, people still pay it.
They do. It's expensive. I mean, the maintenance that they have, the things that they do to create the magic to bring these experiences to people that we love so much. And I mean, just maintenance in Florida in general is so hard. I mean, just as a person who used to live on the West Coast and moved to the East Coast, like the weather is so damaging to surfaces, and the landscaping grows like a million times faster than anywhere else. And so part of me understands now that I'm here and a homeowner, I get why it's so expensive, but that doesn't make it any less expensive. Like it is still really a lot of money, but you just really have to decide what you're wanting to get from it. So
I think we would all feel better about how much money it was if the money was going into cast members' pockets, the frontline cast members, the ones we're dealing with, and not the tip top of the company. I get that their jobs are stressful, and they worked really hard to get in the positions they are in, and I will never I will never criticize them for that. In some cases, they've gone to school, they've put in their time, so they deserve a little bit of it. But at the same time, too, it's when people are on food stamps trying to get by because they're cast members at Walt Disney World, and people are shelling out $130 for a one-day ticket. It's some stuff is inexcusable. So we can talk all we want about how we need all this money to go into Disney so they can keep up with stuff, but until they pay their cast members fairly, then I don't think that's even. I think
that's a really excellent point that you're making, Craig, because I think about it like this: cast members' shoes. They're not part of the costume. They don't get extra money from that. I mean, I think some of that has changed a little bit with the union thing, but from my experience, when you're standing on the pavement, when it's 100 degrees outside, it eats through the rubber and your shoes a lot faster. And the amount that Disney pays you, you have to buy a very specific type of a shoe to meet the costume guidelines. And then on top of that, like you'd think like, okay, well, I'm going to go to Walmart and have to buy like $30 shoes, but what are you doing to your body at that point? You know? And so that's a really good point, Craig.
I never thought of it like that.
Yeah. Well, they don't. It's a lot of. There's a lot of disrespect in terms of the lower people at Disney that I feel like, and you guys can defend it all you want or whatever. But my experience there is that you can get into some really bad and sort of not healthy situations within the company. But at the same time, there are positions that people have risen out of and made more money and done well for themselves, and that's great, and I think that's awesome. But I think Craig makes a very good point.
I do too. It's a good point. And it's so funny because my husband just got a couple of new pairs of shoes because he walks the dog twice, or no, he used to do it twice a day. He does it once a day, but his shoes wear out. The bottoms literally wear out here, where back home it was just, they just started looking ratty. The soles were fine. The treads were fine. Everything about the shoe was absolutely, fine. But here that is not the case. And so I'm glad that you brought that point up because that makes a lot of sense. And it's something that I don't think I don't think people that don't live here, I don't think they think about that kind of stuff.
It's something I always look at a cast member's shoes. I think about it. I got into this mode where I thought about the time where you're like, well, I can't get another pair yet. And you have a hole in the bottom of them. And then I'd see some cast members walking down and I'm seeing like the sole is kind of hanging off. And I'm thinking like it's not because they don't want to get the shoes. You want to have comfortable shoes. The problem is they also don't make comfortable shoes in the style that Disney wants you to wear them. So this has been a Disney shoe podcast, but let's talk about the people that go to Disney World. Okay, so because that's on my list here too, is about having been a cast member and now having been an annual pass holder for however many years. Is that I think generally we, as everybody on this podcast right now, is a respectful people. You know, that we are polite. We do know what it has been like for people who have worked in a theme park, you know, and we try to give them the benefit of the doubt, but we also know what it takes to work in a theme park and that sort of stuff. But you can get the most entitled people I always said the worst of humanity, even if it's the best of humanity's there, the worst of humanity's there as well.
Also, yes.
I have had people swear at me, spit at me, all that stuff because I asked them to slide over a little bit so a woman and a baby could sit on the end of a row. And, you know, stuff like that. And you think like, oh, well, just these people. It was like a regular occurrence. And then we all know you get the type of annual pass holder who just because they're an annual pass holder somehow makes them better than everybody else. And it's not about being better than anybody else. It's about you just say like, okay, well, I'm going more and this is what I've chosen to do. I don't know. How do you guys feel about people?
People are just really hard. They really are. I mean, it kind of blows my mind how people don't care about other people. Like there's a higher percentage of people that just don't care about other people to me than there are people who do care about other people. And it's kind of shocking sometimes to me.
Yeah.
So, you know, in fact, one of my favorite articles was written back in September of 2019. It's one of my favorites. So I have to share this article. It was by one of our contributors who writes for the Diz, David Tubbs. He wrote the 10-step guide to not being a jerk at Walt Disney World. And this article lives on our planning page because these things really happen. And some of us just can't believe it because we're so thoughtful and so considerate toward other people, even more than ourselves. And so when you see these kinds of behaviors going on, you just shake your head and keep walking sometimes because you're just in sheer disbelief.
Yeah. Jenny, what were you going to say?
Well, I think not to make excuse for people's behaviors because people's behavior in the parks can be just ridiculous and without excuse. But I think that in part, or at least I wonder in part, how much some of the other factors that we've already talked about in today's episode factor in to the end result in the parks. It's the price. And so if someone has had to scrimp and save as one needs to do a lot of times to be able to come on this Walt Disney World vacation, right? It's a trip of a lifetime. There's a lot of pressure on every minute of every moment spent in a theme park. And the perception of that pressure weighing on us can manifest itself in a myriad of ways. Mm-hmm. And one of those ways is obnoxious behavior. Like you guys have said it for years. Do you know how much you paid for this vacation? Well, we've all paid that much for this vacation. Right. Some people can manage it a whole lot better than others. But regardless, some people choose to check it at the gate when they walk in a theme park, check decency at the gate, check manners at the gate, and on behalf of, just cast members and other guests in the park, please, 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 let's all remember to not let those things stay at the park gate, to go ahead and carry them with us. And it's so funny, Rhino, you talking about some of your experiences as a cast member and the people getting upset at you. Yeah, that happens all the time. Mm-hmm. And you would think that even though with the frequency of those occurrences, like it would be less of a big deal. No, those cast members, that's not easy to shake. Yeah. An interaction with a guest who is just just unhappy and expresses it in a really unhealthy way at a cast member. That cast member has to carry that with them and brings it home to their family. And it just, it ripples out from there. So the flip side of this coin is, while we have power, we could use our powers for good or for evil, right? So, we can easily flip that and realize that our ability to just be really nice guests in the park. But unfortunately, some of us forget that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, and it's, I'm sure it's all happened we've all been in a position too, where we've had that bad experience and we're just like, and we want something, or, because we've been to a park a million times, we're just like super frustrated and annoyed by the people who don't know where they're going. I mean, I'm guilty of that every day. It's like, it's stressful to me but I know not everyone's brains work the same way either. So I try to, even when I'm getting frustrated, I try to tell myself that, where I'm like, oh, these people are being so oblivious to everything around them. And I'm like, they're probably just soaking in the moment sometimes and everything. But Craig, did you have anything to say? I'm sorry. You leaned up like you were going to say something.
Oh, no, I was just readjusting. So,
okay. Okay, so we're going to talk about our last one we had on the list really quick here, which was actually also on our What Makes the Disney Parks Best, and that is what makes it the worst is nostalgia. And Craig, I think you were the one who suggested this, maybe, or was it Denny? I don't know.
I think it was a group consciousness that I brought up and Jackie followed up with too. I don't remember the initial point that I made about it when we came up with this list, so I apologize. But I
wrote it down actually.
Well, I'm gonna try to pull it out of my rear at the same time and see if I can make some sense out of it. But I think one of the issues, at least in my brain, with nostalgia, that's a problem with Disney parks is that when you do have that nostalgia for the parks, it's also it's easier to not change stuff and let the parks become stale, and we see it all the time when there's attractions that overstay their welcome way too long and really just don't get the update that they deserve, because at the end of the day we can just sit back and be like, oh, it's nostalgia. There's nothing wrong with it. And a lot of times it's as simple as just fixing up one or two things here and there, and all of a sudden it breathes new life into it. But nostalgia can be a beast, because it can take something that everyone does love, but also make it worse for the wearer, because it overstays its time in the sun, so to say. But I'm sure I said more. I don't remember.
Well, I wrote down that you wrote that people oftentimes will let mediocrity go because of that, of that brand loyalty. I said it on the Tuesday show, whenever that this brand loyalty that people have towards Disney turns into a toxic relationship, because they're like, it's as if it's not a business that you can hold accountable for stuff sometimes, and you know what, you make a good point though, like having that love of something that, like, when you really look at it and everything else has grown and advanced around it, that if it's not getting the love it deserves, then why do you want this thing that's not great to hang around, I guess,
I made a really good point when I said the mediocrity thing. That was a good job, Greg. So I'm sticking right to it. So, it's when you just allow mediocrity to be okay out of pure nostalgia, that's when you roll up with your son to Lester's Possum Park that you remember and know and love, and before you know it, animatronics are flying all over the place and you feel like you're afraid. So nostalgia.
Lester's Possum. I do love that scene. But, well, there you have it. That's our list of some of the things that make a Disney park the worst. So what do you feel like we missed some stuff? Do you feel like we were too harsh on some stuff? Let us know in the comments of this video. Thank you, everyone, for having this discussion. Thank you, everyone out there, for listening and watching. And remember, if you are planning your next Disney vacation, please consider using the agents over at dreamsunlimitedtravel.com to help you get started. It will cost you nothing, and you help support us in the show. So again, thank you, everyone, and we will be back with another episode of the best and worst of Walt Disney World. Bye, everyone.